Welcome to the J.R. Hendrick Texan Night, the podcast that deals with the early life of J.R. Hendrick. And now, reading the story, Jimmy and J.R. August 8th, 1994, 3 a.m. Eastern. Jim wakes up with Betsy at his side. Regretting that she has to return back to Baton Rouge today. 4:35 a.m. Jim goes and sits on one of the porches outside the mansion to light a cigarette, enjoying the day before getting back to his wife one last time. 6:15 a.m. Eastern. In the mansion chapel, Betsy and J.R., mother and son, read the Bible for the last time, at least for a few days. J.R. felt low about Mama leaving for Baton Rouge. But she made him promise that he would call as soon as he got to Dallas, Texas, and call as soon as he got settled in Lubbock. 4:10 a.m. Mountain. Waking up, Betsy goes into the den and starts listening to Hank Williams on her Walkman with headphones, so as not to disturb Tom, Diana, or Hannon. The latter would begin school in over 2 weeks. 6 a.m. Central. With a truck headed full of hogs, Kyle and another hand decide to take it to a hog auction in Hereford, Texas. Madison was going to take the kids to see some family in Hobbs, New Mexico. 8 a.m. Eastern. Feeling disappointed that Betsy won't let him drive her to the airport, Jim goes to the office and begins crafting the introduction to his speech with a little help from Cousin Joe. Since J.R. had a test on Wednesday, Jim decided he would take Joe with him to Dallas for Wednesday, all the way through early Thursday morning. 9:30 a.m. Eastern. In philosophy class, the discussion turns to human resource ethics. Laura Madsen, professor of philosophy and economics, stated she doubted the ethical view of the Hawthorne effect. 8:40 a.m. Mountain. Leaving Hannon to the care of Harriet, the governess, Elizabeth, Tom, and Diane depart in their plane bound from El Paso to Baton Rouge to see Betsy. 12 p.m. Eastern. having lunch with Miss Hannah Lee. I told her about how down I was, that I wasn't going to be able to see my mama until Thanksgiving. She gave me a big hug and offered to have dinner with us in Bill Hume's apartment tonight. Pizza. 12:35 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, it had been a tough morning at work, as Jim could hardly get his speech done because he was feeling sad for Betsy going away. Watching CBNC, he learned that Congressman Paul Michael, House Minority Leader, had received the Presidential Medal of Freedom and was no doubt going to be meeting President Clinton in the White House. Michael was desirous to take the economic care package away from welfare reform and to vote it down in the House. He is angry with President Clinton and therefore hoped that Carol Stringer could go after him in the next press conference tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. So I'm helping Daddy write his speech at the U.S. Small Business Administration in Washington, D.C. Because he liked some of the words. He asked me to change the word ethics to morals. Considering what I learned this morning from my Professor Laura Madsen, and her psychologist or philosophy advisor, Frank Connor, I had no problem doing that at all. Jim had heard of Frank Connor. He campaigned with him for Bill Clinton and hoped of passing a crime bill. Connor, ironically, was a moderate, conservative Reagan Democrat. Graduating magna cum laude from Columbia University and cum laude from Columbia University Law School before teaching business law and ethics at Royal Marymount University in Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. In 1993, he moved his family to Washington, D.C., teaching philosophy at Ascension Christian College. 12:20 p.m. Eastern. Meanwhile, Christine Forever and Bobby are having fun in the little fountain outside of the Swain Richardson Plantation. In 1854, the mansion was owned by Carl Richardson, but then Richardson took his family and slaves. Mary Richardson would die in Boulder, Colorado in 1903. She had her body taken by train to Dallas, Texas, to be buried with her sister and brothers. The colonel would join her in burial there in 1908. The mansion is currently owned by Fox Swain. Fox met his sixth cousin, Jeremy Swain, in waiting in line to greet President John F. Kennedy. 2:15 p.m. Eastern. Against Heidi's nag, Emily Cummings put me in a limo to go straight to the Heritage Foundation. I was thrilled to hear from future House Speaker Newt Gingrich talk about some PR necessities in order to help release the conservative contract with America on September 30th. 2:05 p.m. Eastern. With 8 hogs to sell, Kyle is disappointed because he was only able to sell 1. He made arrangements for some of the hens to take 3 of the 7 to the butcher the next day and try for the hog auction Tuesday, the 16th in Palestine, Texas. 2:10 p.m. Central. Listening to George Strait, Betsy and Elizabeth catch up for lost time. They both knew that after Elizabeth leaves back to Midland on the 13th, they will most likely not see each other until around Thanksgiving. At the same time, Jim fields one last phone call for the day after calling Bob Michael in the U.S. House on making for a person to talk to Harry Rowland for Score, a Bush administration appointee. Rowland had graduated from Brown University with a bachelor's in political science and moved on to Columbia University School of Law. 3 p.m. Central. Walking into the ranch bunkhouse after a fight with Madison, Kyle asks for 8 glasses of beer. 4 p.m. Eastern. Returning home, I knew that Daddy was heartbroken inside his bedroom, having at least 3 bottles of beer to settle his heartbreak. So I got one work assignment, writing a statement for Carol Stringer's press conference for 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. 6 p.m. Eastern. Here I am having dinner in the Hume apartment. A whole group of us, myself, Miss Walker, Charlie Nation, and this girl that he's sweet on named Amy. Bill Hume and this girl he was dating named Harriet. But he was going to be taking them all out tomorrow night campaigning to raise funds in Orange, Virginia. And the surprise getting Bill Manor showed up for dinner, announcing the support for Bill Young, Bill, as a young congressman. They gave him $640,000 check. Okay. Just takes a little patience here. Not correct document. August 9th, 1994, 1:30 a.m. Eastern. Jimmy is in his home office at the mansion, working on some extra work product for in the morning. He was going to have a meeting with who he calls Miss Alex sometime this morning to talk about the evaluation of each intern and recommendations for their academic deans. 1:20 a.m. Central. Elizabeth wakes up with sharp abdominal pain and reaching for her tonic, goes out the back door of one of the houses of Mary Jane to sit by the water. Turning on her cassette player, Elizabeth listens to Cool Water by Monty Robbins. Drinking her tonic, she realizes that her husband Jeremy would enjoy this vacation in Louisiana when he wasn't drinking. 3:15 a.m. Eastern. Irritated, Jim had tried watching the news, but all that's on this time at night is infomercials. So he went down to the mansion library to do an internet search on what Edward Rowland was doing with Score. He tied down a few notations and would make plans to call Carol Stringer sometime this morning before the 9 a.m. press conference. 9 a.m. Eastern. In philosophy class, we took a field trip to the library to hear the guidelines of the term paper that was due in 1 week. I chose to write my paper about ethical situations, a privatization of some government functions, given some authority of government to run like a business. 8 months from now, one thing I wouldn't know is this would cause a hot between myself and Charlie Nation. Around that same time, at the Small Business Administration in Washington, D.C., Jim was listening to the Carol Stringer press conference on radio, where she praises President Clinton's efforts with SCORE, but goes after him about the lack of economic incentives for small business. 12 p.m. Eastern. Shrimp scampi is being served in the reception room, and Jared goes to sit next to Charlie Nation. So, Charlie teased, what ethical dilemma do you have today? How is it that you see that it's your business? Gerald said politely. Well, so you happen to know John Garland knows I'll be with the Hume campaign. So he's assigned me to help set up a platform for bill tax cuts for small business, legalize weed, abortion rights. Now just hold on. You can't be serious if you call yourself conservative, but yet support abortion. You are such a wuss, Hendrick. Not just an outright wimp. Not all right-wingers oppose abortion. Not all opposed condoms and safe sex. In Generation X, such as I. Now, at this point, I had enough signal for one of the servants to take my tray into my suite so I can eat alone. "1 p.m. Central. At Swainfield, Cal is out with the other ranch hands, milking cows. The closest cattle auction would be in Lubbock on Friday, and so Cal wanted to take Madison, George, and Andrew for a day trip to Lubbock. 3 p.m. Eastern. Encouraged by Emily Cummings, I took a limo to the Heritage Foundation. Listened to a brief by Dr. Irene Hepburn. The topic was, ironically, abortion and contraception's impact on the economy. Stop. 5 p.m. with the reception room serving quiche. JR is believed to be having dinner with his father and a family of his special assistant, Carol Stringer. Dinner was to be fried chicken. 7:20 p.m. Fed up with the news on President Clinton versus Bush, and realizing that both JR and Cousin Joe are getting restless, he asked him to meet him down at the swimming pool for a party. And they could have a party until 9 p.m. Eastern. And now I'm sitting in my workstation studying my notes for business ethics. I'm listening to some tapes I have of today's Blake Carter show. But actually, after about 5 minutes, I turned it off. Because, quite frankly, here we were, talking about how we should never have elected Bill Clinton. Daddy hadn't invited him to the house for a while. It was easy to see. August 10th, 1994, 1:30 a.m. Eastern. Waking up after only a few hours of sleep, Jim goes into the front lounge and takes a picture of Betsy out of his wallet. He can't wait to see his wife. Even though he knows, Gerald longs for that. He knows that he needs Joe for this particular trip, and that he would benefit for a trip away from D.C., seeing that on August 19th, Joe would be flying to his next assignment in New Orleans. 1:10 a.m. Central. Elizabeth wakes up with night sweats for the first time since 1974, when she woke up to find baby JR drenched in sweat. And so, back then, she carried the little 2-year-old or 4-year-old for work. Now, Elizabeth just takes a cold shower and dresses in a much lighter gown, going back to sleep. 2:10 a.m. Eastern. Jim is reading the front page of the Wall Street Journal. The top story is FBI director gone rogue. Janet Reno okays small-scale investigation of opponents of crime bill. So Jim crumples his paper and puts it into the wastebasket. 2:30 a.m. Eastern. Jim wakes up after another hour of sleep. What can he do? He has The front desk lower the pool temperature to ice cold. Then he goes down to the pool and takes one of the big cold plunges. 4:30 a.m. Central. Jim, Joe, and Kelly get into the limo to drive to Baltimore, Washington, D.C. International Airport. Jim looks at the small business resource guide given him by the SBA and skims through his speech as the limo drives to the airport. 5 a.m. Eastern. So, I'm studying my business ethics. Notes, listen to Christian radio. There was this praying pastor asking for Hank Jolly, who was talking about the problems of fornication. And he was preaching, he was talking about the campaign, True Love Waits, something which I very strongly believed in. 5:20 a.m. Eastern. Jim walks into the private security of Baltimore, Washington, D.C. International Airport. Again, informing security that he had a plate in his leg from 1986. Also, a plate in his arm, which he broke in the Air Force in 1971. 5:35 a.m. Eastern. Jim, Joe, and Kelly board the plane bound for Dallas, and the pilot starts the private jet engines. So that's 5:20. 5:50 a.m. Eastern. The charter jet taxis down the runway and takes off from Baltimore, Washington International Airport, heading straight to DFW. 9:30 a.m. Exam being over, I waited outside of Ascension Christian College, straight towards the limo. Back at the mansion, I knew I had to work before the lunch of burgers. I knew I had to put out another editorial with Daddy's calling signature on the SBA BBS. At 8:30 a.m. With Betsy already arrived and checked into their personal suite at the Grand Hyatt, the DFW airport. Jim is speaking at the University of Texas at Dallas School of Business. He is addressing as he sees the future of entrepreneurship in America. 10:15 a.m. Taking my laptop into my suite, Mike Fields helps me tap into the SBA networks, and therefore I wrote the editorial that he asked me to under the supervision of Mike Fields while listening to some Christian radio preaching. 1 p.m. Eastern. 1 p.m. Eastern. There I was, taking part of a meeting in Daddy's place with Erskine Bowles and Bill Mayer, as Daddy is in negotiations in Dallas for Jasper Health. The subject on Erskine Bowles and Bill Mayer's mind was an economic boost for small business. 1 p.m. Central. Arriving at the suite of Hyatt, Jim is tired from all these meetings, but he perks up when he is greeted by his best friend, Claude. 2 p.m. Eastern. Feeling tired? I go on another errand for Emily Cummings, for Florida City, Connie Mack, Aide, Lee and Jordan. I've been doing errands all afternoon. I'm just tired of it all. 3:05 p.m. Back at the Hyatt, Jim and company were listening to Charlie Daniels. Claude is touched by the death of Virginia-born country singer Robin Cavendish, who died Monday. She died in her home in Bronxville, New York. 5:18 p.m. Eastern. Back home again. I was happy to be done with work, and so I sat in the Southeast Lounge. In the front lounge, some interns were watching the Norma Sanders Society page. Apparently, there had been some rumor that senatorial aide Lynn Johnson was involved with an affair with a Washington, D.C. conservative journalist. I just walked away, fed up with the whole thing. 5 p.m. Central. At the mansion, Hendrick party calls for room service, with Claude, Betsy, and Becky order some gumbo and boudin. Cousin Joe orders some wild wings with a schooner of beer he split with Kelly. Jim, meanwhile, orders some fried cod. 6 p.m. Eastern. At the Hendrick Estate in Washington, D.C., JR is having a small dinner party. And what his father was called the Ward Council, which he had with Joseph Blackwell. With Francis Blackwell and his son, Joseph. It was a wonderful time for him as we received investment tips to strengthen him. 10 p.m. Eastern. So, when in my workstation, I get ready to lie down here in a few minutes, listening to Christian radio. Pittsburgh Episcopal priest, Father Hank Johnson, was talking about the teachings of the Apostle Paul to the church. I was all right. I had received a call that evening that Daddy was having to stay an extra day to take care of business in Kilgore, Texas. August 11th, 1994. 3:30 a.m. Eastern. Mike Fields is in the mansion kitchen getting ready to discuss some renovation of this mansion. While Jim and the interns leave in a little over a week, the little intern housing suites would be turned into specialty suites for high-profile guests. The auditorium would be reverted to a movie theater, or also for presentations. Office space for the evaluators would become planning rooms for Jim's press briefings. Other than the mentioned entrance with a keypad lock would be redecorated, with some parts of the mansion would remain the same, namely to some extent the chapel and the library, the kitchen's spaces upstairs, which were once places for kitchen table gatherings for discussion between interns, would be for high society events for Betsy. One thing that would absolutely not change would be the private medical workstation. Should any of the family get sick, and by next summer, JR would be back there. And so Jim wanted a medical staff to take care of his needs should he need help. 3 a.m. Central. Waking up, Jim is feeling a little cantankerous, and until he finds out that Betsy planned with the change herself. Fly back with him to D.C. for a final farewell. We're flying back to Baton Rouge the morning of the 15th. Tom had agreed to fly Betsy back to El Paso before they would take the Saturday morning flight back to Midland and for Swainfield. 6:31 a.m. Eastern. Taking my Bible and my devotional, I go into the mansion chapel and sit down and begin reading again. Reading. Mike was excited that he learned by email that Mama was coming with Daddy tomorrow, and she would be leaving again early Monday morning. 7:30 a.m. Eastern. Uncle Mike called me up to the main mansion kitchen to have pancakes for breakfast. My Mama or Daddy with powdered sugar. Nothing would do that Mike had to put in some Florida organic sugar. 5:20 a.m. 8:20 a.m. Central. Jim and Betsy, Joe and Kelly decided to have pancakes for breakfast. Clyde and Becky had gone to stay with some other friends the night before. So the suite was all theirs. Earlier this morning, Jim had called and complained to Blake Carter about being called to Kilgore, Texas, to speak tonight. The only benefit Jim could see was it would be for Betsy to return home the next day, 11 a.m. JR exits the Ascension Christian College after having taken an after ethics class, and so he walked towards the limousine to meet Hanley Walker. Together they would have a lunch at Pizzeria Paradiso. "1 p.m. Central. Meanwhile, in the Hyatt Business Center, Cousin Joe is helping Jim type his keynote address to the Business Association at Kilgore, that would be at a Comfort Inn and Suites. 3 p.m. Eastern. Emily Cummings sends me to the Kennedy Caucus Room to look at Senate Banking Committee hearings on Whitewater. Of course, small business was also brought up, so that was normal. What happened that evening was unbelievable. Jim was seriously on edge, really bothered about what was going on. Betsy got a Cadillac service to take them to Kilgore, and a Mercedes service to take them back. However, arriving in Kilgore, Jim finds out that the event was canceled because there wasn't enough tickets sold. Frustrated, Jim sees a gaggle of reporters and has a brief news statement right then and there about President Clinton calling him scatterbrained. This would affect things for quite a long time. Hope you enjoy listening to the J. Hendrick Texan Night. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and become a part of receiving the adventure. It's James Hendrick Powers Empowerment saying until next time, get ready for the rest of the story. The vista gets a bit more interesting from here.